Hi again, everyone. Welcome to SEC Breakdown. This is your show of record for what has to be considered at this point after we saw 2015's postseason, the best and still the best conference in college football. I'm Mark Rogers of Mark Rogers TV, and this is what we do each and every Thursday night. Below me is Will Gunter from Fox Sports Radio. We also have David Waters from SEC Breakdown and Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama. We heard that once or twice during the college football playoff. All right, gentlemen, we got to start with some bad news on a couple fronts of some prominent programs. Ole Miss, Tennessee, some controversy out there. Hey, Stephen, and we'll start with you in regards to this Ole Miss situation. 13 of 28 violations. Unfortunately, Stephen M. dropped off. So, hey, Will, we'll tee you up instead. Talking about the Ole Miss issues here. 13 of 28 rules violations levied against, apparently, we'll have to see how this plays out, the football program. Hugh Freeze's staff involved with the lesser ones as far as we know right now. So based in your experience, because you've covered a lot of these NCAA investigations in the past, your thoughts about where this will possibly lead, how much trouble you think the football program's in at this point?
Well, I don't know if you guys saw this tonight, a very interesting thing kind of breaking out of Texas that will relate to what happened in Mississippi. Chris Vaughn, defensive back in Texas, parts ways, and Chris Vaughn originally was spending some time there at Mississippi. I think, I talked about this on the radio earlier this week in reference to Mississippi. You had a source close to the situation on signing day, right before signing day, come out and say that none of the allegations really revolved around the program. Now, all of a sudden you have a source, again, that's all you're dealing with at this point, saying, no, wait, these allegations actually have something to do with Mississippi and what we've seen. You're going to have to let it play out. I don't know if it's fair or unfair. I follow recruiting. I love recruiting. It's $1 million industry, and I think it's great to talk about. When you see a school like Mississippi who doesn't have the cachet of, say, an Alabama or Auburn, the tradition, the supposed facilities, and they start landing the Laquan Treadwells and the Laramie Tunsil's, people are instantly going to look at them a little funny and a little sideways. And you've had Hugh Freeze be more than defiant in saying, you know what, if you've got something on my program, come out and prove it. And nobody's been able to do that. Now we get these allegations. Will something come up? Yeah, the NCAA. I watched something happen similar to South Carolina where they showed up a couple years ago to investigate a situation with North Carolina, and they found stuff on South Carolina. There's going to be some stuff that comes up on Mississippi. How significant is it? Is it as bad as we think it is? That's going to be the $1 million question, and it's one that I think is unfair to speculate on given the nature of the allegations.
So Ole Miss Athletic Director Ross Bjork says we're not going to run away from anything. The school has also already self-reported some of these issues. Laramie Tunsil, we already knew that there were issues there regarding his recruitment and also some of the benefits that he received while he was on campus. That's speculative. That's kind of out there, and we would expect that to be a big deal. The bump rule, which involves coaches having contact with recruits during a designated non-contact evaluation period, that was apparently violated as well. It may not turn into what we saw with this Ole Miss football program in the early 1990s, which was close to the death penalty at that point, David, but still pretty serious stuff in Oxford.
It is, and we go back to last week where everybody kind of thought, oh, this is kind of convenient, where it came out right before signing day, and people were wondering, oh, will it really hurt them and stuff, and it didn't at all. I don't think it's going to as of right now. That's like as Will said, that what we see now is kind of much it's. With the Tunsil thing, he already has heard his suspension earlier in the year, missed the first 7 games, I believe. And, so that's, nothing's changing there. I think, what was surprising, we heard adamantly, oh, this is more about women's basketball and not much about football and not much about Hugh Freeze. It was more about Houston Nutt. When, now it's coming out that 9 of these allegations, or 13 were football, and 9 of them are coming from the Hugh Freeze era. So, is there any effect to how this goes forward? too close to say that right now, but it's not a good look, especially with all the rumors that we've heard. Will brought that up too. You bring these big time recruits when Ole Miss, really before that was just an okay team under Jevin Sneed and Dexter McCluster and those type of guys. And now all of a sudden they're bringing in 5-star from Florida, like, Tunzel and Treadwell. And it's just, it did raise eyebrows. And then the SEC is definitely going to raise eyebrows. So we're just ready to kind of see where it's going since we've heard, these rumors for a few seasons now.
You guys are in the heart of this, covering different sports. Hey, Will, jump right in there.
Well, I was going to say, I want to go back to what David brought up, because I think it's interesting. I'm about to maybe watch it transpire at South Carolina. Or you think so, you hope so if you're a South Carolina fan, with Will Muschamp, who's a supposed recruiter and is a guy that Gamecock fans here in this part are going, okay, hey, now if we don't land 1 5-star guy, 2 5-star guys a year, South Carolina's not a traditionally strong program. They made their living off of in-state guys, Clowney and Lattimore and Gilmore and Jeffrey over the past few years. What happens if Will Muschamp, who's a supposed recruiter, comes out and starts pulling some guys out of Florida? Does the SEC instantly look at Will Muschamp like we now look at Mississippi and go, wait a minute, you're South Carolina. There's no way you can do that. You clearly have to be cheating. Now, I'll go back to Laramie Tunsil. The recruitment was crazy. I don't know if you guys remember that, Georgia or Florida, and all of a sudden the last weekend he decides to visit Mississippi after not mentioning them the entire time. But I do wonder where we draw the line on safe journalism and safe reporting and not making over assumptions on a situation like this, because maybe Hugh Freeze is a phenomenal recruit. There are great things. There's some pretty good looking girls in Oxford, Mississippi. The facilities are pretty good. But where do you draw the line? Where do we draw the line on a program like a Mississippi or a South Carolina or a Mississippi State that all of a sudden has this recruiting success and you go, wait a minute, you can't do that. You're not a traditional power. You shouldn't do that. And I think that's what I'm having a hard time with Mississippi. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But who's to say that they aren't doing it legitimately and that Hugh Freeze is a very good recruiter that Texas maybe should have considered more so than Charlie Strong when that job was open? I have a hard time with that. And I think you have to be very careful in what assumptions, not just us, but anybody makes when you start looking at the Mississippi program.
Hey, Will, you're right here in South Carolina. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, sorry, but yeah, I like that. When you brought up Will Muschamp in South Carolina, if he does come in and pull 5 stars from Florida, I think what the surprising thing with Hugh Freeze was this was his first big time job and coming in and doing this. Will Muschamp, has experience. He's from Florida, already has some relationships down here, and we've known for years Will Muschamp is that type of recruiter. So I think he would get more of a pass than what Hugh Freeze did. But I agree, I do agree with Will. It's hard to say, until there's more fire, it's just smoke right now. And Hugh Freeze has turned out to be a pretty darn good coach. Maybe he went and sold that a little bit. So, it's probably really going to be hard to prove. And I think we probably would have saw some stuff by now if that was the case.
Hey, Stephen, I think we got some noise bleeding in. I'm going to cut you out for just a second until we're ready to bring you in to respond in like 30 seconds. Okay?
Okay.
Because Will, I'm going to go back to something that you said just a second ago, and you're right there in South Carolina, because people make too many assumptions that particular programs can't recruit or can't recruit at that level. And you're right there close to Clemson. Now, Clemson was not hauling in top 5 classes until Dabo Swinney took charge and just was able to accomplish that in the last couple of years. Clemson was recruiting top 20 or 25 or 35 classes. The same thing we've seen at Texas A&M, recruiting top 30 and 35 classes, and all of a sudden Kevin Sumlin can bring in top 5 classes over the span of 2 or 3 years. So it's not unheard of. Maybe there's some violations, maybe there's some peculiar activity going on, or maybe it's just a particular coach and coaching staff that he's gathered is able to strike a chord, make some relationships with some key high school football programs and coaches, and make it happen. And I don't think we can assume anything in particular there. We'll bring in Stephen M. Smith at some point if he calls back in. But that's the Ole Miss situation right now. And the other thing I'll allude to that you talked about, Will, was the environment of programs turning each other in. And when I was in the middle of the SEC covering 3 of these schools, that's what we had in the mid to late 90s. There was a span of time there in about 8 or 10 years where everybody in the SEC, the entire conference outside of Vandy, nobody really cared at that point or does now, that everybody else was either on probation, just gotten off probation, or was under serious scrutiny because, hey, we got in trouble, we know they're doing the same thing, or maybe we don't know they're doing the same thing, but we're going after them anyway. And schools were just turning in each other, and it was a rough time for the SEC. They played through it. There's no question about that, but it was still a tough time. And we haven't seen that kind of upheaval in the SEC regarding recruiting violations since then until pretty much now. So that's where we stand with Ole Miss right now.
Yeah, I think it's funny as you grow in this profession and you meet people and these coaches branch out and there's people that I've known that were at South Carolina and have now moved around. Everybody will seem to tell you that other school is doing something sideways. I always had a coach say, "Does that school get sideways?" Okay, yeah, that's no problem. I think there's a code in college football. You don't, unless it's just blatant, unless it's just out, unless it's the what was it, the Kentucky basketball situation in the 80s where you're mailing somebody money and the package busts open in the post office. I don't know if you can turn people in. I saw the guy from Mississippi State, the PI a couple weeks ago, that said he was going to Oxford to dig up information. But I don't think schools – I'm one of those believers. Every school is in the gray area. Now, to what level of the gray area are you in, and are you outside of the gray area into the legal red area? That's the million-dollar question. But every school is pushing the gray area. The NCAA comes on any campus at any time. I don't care if it's Alabama. I don't care if it's South Carolina. I don't care if it's Clemson. They're going to find something. If they go to Oxford, there's going to be something. I go back to South Carolina. They came in to ask about Marvin Alston, the infamous picture of the Cheesecake Factory's receipt. Well, they show up at South Carolina. They want to question Wesley Saunders. Okay, so where does Wesley Saunders live? We need to go talk to him. Oh, by the way, he lives in the Whitney Hotel over there. And all of a sudden, the investigators are wandering through the Whitney Hotel and going, this is a really nice place for a college student to live. How do you end up here? Those guys get on campus. They're going to find something. I just don't think there's another people turning each other in. I think it ends up happening.
Hey, Stephen, we've covered quite a bit of ground, but definitely want you to chime in regarding the Ole Miss situation. Because on one hand, it doesn't sound like it's a huge, huge deal that's going to cost the program for quite a long time, but at the same time, it is pretty serious, and much of it stems during this freeze era with the Rebels.
It's crazy, Mark. This is a program under Coach Freeze that you guys brought up the first big time recruiting class in 2018, a class that had Laquan Treadwell, Jeremy Tunsil, and a lot of 5-star talent. And it's perplexing because you don't want this to happen, especially at a program where it's trying to continue to build towards winning a conference championship and a national championship. Now, I don't know all of the intricate details of what happened with Saunders and his overall influence on the program, but me personally, this is something that you do not want, especially for a team that's trying to, as I mentioned, win an SEC title. It's come close in the last couple of seasons, and especially a national championship, something that Ole Miss has not really been a part of and competing for since the Archie Manning years.
Okay, guys, there are violations and allegations that involve football and desperate attempts and cheating to win on the field. Then there are legal issues and there are serious acts against humanity. And that's what we've got here at Tennessee potentially. So, Will, can you kind of take us through what we've heard come out just in the last couple of days regarding the University of Tennessee and just your thoughts about what could be going on here?
Well, the concerning thing, obviously, is the lawsuit and the general complacency of the potential complacency of sexual assault that is being thrown at Tennessee. That's obviously disturbing. The story regarding Dre Bowles, the wide receiver who may or may not have – you can hear me say may or may not because situations like this, I hate to rush into any innuendo on what may have happened, but may have helped that young lady who had been raped and then was beaten up in a cafeteria at Smokey's Cafe by 2 other football players while coaching staff members were around. If that's the case, there's not a single person in the athletic department, the football office that should be retained and have a job. This is a serious situation. I think we're naive if we think that this is not happening to some extent across the country at different universities, but to have it on this kind of level is scary. And I'll say this about Tennessee, there's almost at times a level of protection around Tennessee. I go back to Keith Richardson and 3 players robbed a guy with a gun, robbed a player at a gas station. And all of a sudden, the kid who's robbed with a firearm says, you know what? No. I don't want to press charges. I don't want to hurt the reputation of Tennessee and the potential football players. That's scary to think about. We saw that. I mean, this is off the football field. We talked about it. We can sit here and laugh and joke about paying players, and that's not life. That's football. That's trying to gain the upper hand and win. This is life. This is similar, if it's true, it's similar to what happened at Penn State on a different level, but it's the same kind of allegations. And when you talk about that happening, there has to be an in-depth look, not at the Tennessee athletic program, but the University of Tennessee as a whole, because that's scary to think about that this went on to that level.
Excellent points, Will. David, anything to add about this nasty potential situation in Knoxville?
Well, given the environment of, the sports world and sexual assault allegations, if you're a Tennessee fan or a follower or even in love of sports, whatever, you kind of have to demand that this takes the right course of action. It's we see it all the time, commercials now, and with the NFL players and stuff, the awareness of what's going on in this country with sexual assault it's mind numbing, and it's only growing. And you would think with the popularity of it, we would see less of it. But if somehow we're still hearing about it and still hearing guys do this, to women, and you would think it would slow down, but it's not. It's, we keep hearing about it, and it's all these messages and stuff, and it's not slowing down. It's only growing, it seems, but maybe it's because of, social media and their 24-hour news coverage. But it's really sad to see. And how high does this go up at Tennessee? Did they know this was happening? Did they help cover it up? That's the big question as far as Tennessee goes. But I mean, you really hope that's not the case. You hope these guys are upstanding men that are, leading, 18 to 23-year-olds, and, you hope a coach is not behind it or athletic director. But it's questions that's worth asking, but, it's going to be a while with, to see what happens in the court systems and with the lawsuits and all that.
Yeah, you would hope that people would do the right thing for the right reasons. But even if you don't do the right things and don't show character for the right reasons, protect your career, protect your scholarship, protect your name, protect your future by controlling yourself and doing the right thing. And it's just a tough lesson and a tough thing to see happen in society. Good comments by both of you. Stephen M., you have anything to add to this potentially very nasty situation at the University of Tennessee?
I think it's more than just the Pandora's box situation, Mark, that was, of course, opened by Greg Hardy in the NFL and, of course, Ray Rice. But it all goes back to these players have a tendency to want to have their cake and eat it too. And that stems in from, do you want to be the player that goes out on the field, excels, does their job, but also have a mean streak to you, have a side to you that makes mistakes and expect people to cover up for it, have your cake and eat it too. Not saying that people intentionally have that mantra about themselves, but when it comes down to something of this caliber, sexual assault, domestic violence, something that needs to be stopped, you want to ask yourself, do a lot of these programs have that, I want to make sure my best player is being disciplined, but also not to the point where I could lose him and I could lose something else as well.
This is SEC Breakdown. We come your way every Thursday night on Blab. Get it cranked up here at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central. This is a venture that David Waters and myself started here several weeks ago, trying to get us cranked up with SEC Breakdown. So if you jump on Twitter, look up SEC Breakdown, you're going to see an excellent Twitter feed. All the credit goes to this guy down at the bottom here, David Waters, in providing all sorts of information, retweets of critical insight across SEC football, and also a poll each and every day. Really some good stuff there. So join us on there and join our show each and every Thursday night. So let's take a deep breath, guys, because we finally get to talk about something that's a little lighter, a little more fun. It's Jim Harbaugh doing all sorts of crazy stuff that he's been known for.
He's the mad scientist.
Well, what's that, Stephen M?
He's the mad scientist.
He's the mad scientist. It works for him. It's worked at Stanford. It's worked at the San Francisco 49ers. And by all accounts, in this first season in Michigan and those recruiting classes coming in, it's working once again. So he kind of tears down the box and goes way outside to do what he thinks he needs to do to win at the University of Michigan. We know where the talent is in the country. And most of it's in the Southeast. And so Jim Harbaugh has made his way to the Southeast the last couple of winters to set up some camps. There's controversy over whether this should be allowed or whether, hey, it's a free country and you can set up a camp wherever you'd like. Will, I'll start with you in regards to this Jim Harbaugh situation and him trying to make some inroads into SEC country and him riling up a number of coaches.
It's genius. I mean, yeah, we talked about this. The rivals, the ESPN, the 247 top 100 is a lot of times comprised because of players in the Southeast. You're in Michigan. Those kids, a lot of them have economic struggles. They can't hop on a plane. They can't hop in a car. They can't drive 14, 16 hours, get up to Ann Arbor. Hey, what are you going to do? Let's bring the product to them. Let's take them to IMG. Scary thing here, the relationship with Michigan and IMG, because let's not pretend like IMG is not benefiting from this. IMG is going to get kids from all over the state of Florida go, you know what? I think I'll come check out your facilities and see this Michigan program. Well, all of a sudden, those IMG coaches get those kids on campus and go, hey, why don't you come to IMG and play with us for a little bit? So all of a sudden, little handshake deal. But it's a brilliant move by Harbaugh. Here's the thing that's going to be interesting. It's going to get outlawed. They're going to put it down because of the spring break thing, because of the 4 weeks. They're going to go to that 4-week deal where you've got to give kids 4 weeks. Obviously, we all know that the involuntary summer workouts are not involuntary. You better show up and you better be there. So you got to give kids time. Spring break's the perfect opportunity. But here's what's come up with this, and we've talked a lot about this as we talked earlier with Clemson and South Carolina. Those schools in Michigan too, but now you've got a lot of prospects in Charlotte. There's a big-time quarterback down in Charleston. What's stopping me on Saturday, if I'm Will Muschamp or Dabo Swinney, from taking my program on the road on Saturday? Get in the bus. We're going to Mallard Creek in Charlotte, or we're going to Fort Dorchester in Charleston, South Carolina. If you're Florida, if you're in Gainesville, hey, you might not do it during spring break, but what's stopping the Gators on Saturday from going up to Jacksonville and having a practice at First Coast High School or something like that? You can go over, you go down to Tampa, and you hit the Tampa high schools. This is where it's going to get interesting, because now I think you could see coaches. I saw Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State today basically admit, yeah, you know what? This is a really, really good idea. We can take our teams around the different high schools and hold practices and take the product to the recruit. We'll see what happens with Michigan trying to go to Florida. That's fascinating. It's going to get outlawed. Does it get outlawed before Michigan makes it to IMG?
So, yeah, Jim Harbaugh has gotten creative, but as we all well know, it doesn't matter the venue. It doesn't matter the brand, the product. It doesn't matter the industry. There are copycats, and they jump on board rather quickly. It doesn't take long for other people to say, hey, it's working for him. I can do the same thing. We can do the same thing and take advantage. And this is going to be not necessarily Jim Harbaugh's domain for long. If Mark D'Antonio, you talk about a conservative coach, if he is willing to kind of break out of the mold and do something different to try to enhance Sparty's brand, then we're going to see this, I would think, all over the place, especially as Harbaugh. We would all expect him to thrive there in Ann Arbor. David, your thoughts about Harbaugh last summer? Go ahead, Will.
Sure, Will. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, but again, Harbaugh, you know, what Michigan's trying to do here is just go to the Southeast. D'Antonio basically said, I love the idea, but we aren't hopping on a plane or anything and leaving the state. I think that's okay. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but as this evolves, as spring practices evolve, I think that's okay. Again, Harbaugh is a genius here because, like you said, let's take the whole program and let's go to a state full of it. But I think you're right. When you got a conservative like Mark D'Antonio saying, hey, this actually going to high schools around the state of Michigan, that's where you're going to start to see guys jump on board with that and be willing to travel within maybe a 2 or 3 hour radius to get their spring practice out there.
What do you think about this,
David? What I think is, whether it's going to work, this year, like Will said, and more than likely it will get outlawed. But the big thing is, look, we're talking about it. Michigan, this is SEC breakdown, and we're talking about Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. That's the first step of his plan's already working. We're down here in the South, and we're talking about Michigan. So all of course ESPN's talking about it, SEC Network, Paul Feinbaum. It's happening, and his name is down here more than it ever has been, and because of this one move. So the recruiting is definitely going to step up down in the South. They came down here, played a bowl game in Florida. Now they're going to have a spring game. They played a Florida team in a bowl game, blew them out. So everything is positive for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan down here right now as it stands, and this only ramped it up. It's the SEC's view of. We know the real view. They just don't want it down here. But the reported view and what needs to be put out in public is, yes, it's taking the spring break away from the kids. And I do think that is an issue. How much should they have a choice? Do they really have a choice in the matter? It is their spring break. Were they given a choice for this week or not? I don't really know. But something does need to be done with the time and given to these, like you said, Will said, the 4 weeks that these players are supposed to get. They need the time off. And how are they going to go about doing this if this starts to happen at other schools, or if Michigan continues to try and do this? It's going to be interesting to see how far does it go. Does Notre Dame and Ohio State try and make moves to try and do stuff like this now? Urban Meyer's not going to sit idly by and let Michigan take all the credit for trying to come up with something. Urban Meyer's going to try. His name is big in Florida as there are. So it's going to be interesting to see the chain reaction of this.
Stephen, Jim Harbaugh arrived at Ann Arbor with a huge name as it was, and we know that kids this age generally are attracted to the guy that's his own man, makes his own rules, stands up to the establishment, doesn't bow to anyone, and this is Jim Harbaugh. So kids are attracted to that, and it seems to be working for him.
It seems to be working for him, Mark, but at the end of the day, can he win? Because that's another thing kids are attracted to. Along with looking good, kids are enamored with winning and winning championships. If he can win championships, it will continue to work. If he cannot win consistently, that's where the domino will fall, and that's where the issues will come into play. At the end of the day, Mark, he can be the big man. He can be Mr. I'm not going to take no for an answer. But if Harbaugh can't bring in the championships, then the problem lies.
Well, he's certainly off to a good start. He had a nice recruiting class in 2015. He had a much better one in 2016, a top 5 or 6 class. And in between, he took a 5-7 team and basically the same personnel, took a transfer quarterback from Iowa who's pretty marginal, played much better under Jim Harbaugh, won 10 games, defeated an SEC Eastern Division champion, and finished in the top 10 or 12 in the country. So that's a pretty big turnaround already. No, he's got quite a number of rungs to climb to get to Alabama and even Ohio State within his own conference, as we saw the last game of the season. But he took significant strides that first year. No doubt about that. Hey, Stephen, we know that you've been doing some work tracking these Alabama pro prospects and their track soon going to Indianapolis in the scouting combine. Your thoughts about what's going on there?
It's a bit more. 9 former Bell players will participate in the scouting combine, which is set for February the 23rd through the 29th of this month. Those 9 players being running back Kenyon Drake, running back Derrick Henry, offensive lineman Dominic Jackson, offensive lineman Ryan Kelly, defensive lineman Sean Robinson, Jonathan Allen, linebacker Reggie Ragland, and of course cornerback Cyrus Jones are those 9 players. Jacob Coker did not get an invitation rotation, but he is projected to be a 5th-round pick.
All right, this is SEC Breakdown every Thursday night right here on Blab. We try to get it kicked off at 9 o'clock. This is a venture started by myself, David Waters, also Mike LaValle from Last Word on Sports, and Chad Niepling from Fox Sports Arkansas. For the last couple of weeks, Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama and Will Gunter from Fox Sports Radio there in Columbia and Greenville, South Carolina, helping us break down SEC football. So, guys, appreciate the time, the effort, and we will mix it up here in the next several weeks. I got this idea. See if you guys like this. We see the SEC teams. We go top to bottom, the way they finished in 2015, and we size them up against the other 4 conferences after we seed those. And we just take opinions on who would win the particular matchups, the 1 seed in the SEC against the 1 seed in the Big 12. And then we go right down the rankings, and we just kind of debate and discuss what would happen if those teams would meet on the field.
Sounds great. We can do that.
I'm all for it.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
Breakdown. Thanks for jumping on. That should be a fun exercise. And obviously, with shenanigans going on at Ole Miss and Tennessee, we don't expect those sorts of things, unfortunately, to stop. So we have plenty to talk about during a long off season. We are waiting eagerly for August and August camp and SEC football to come back around. But before that, of course, we're only about 5 weeks away from spring football. So that'll be a whole lot of fun to mix up as well. All right, guys, appreciate it. We'll see you next time.